The Trials of the Master. Thief. Once upon a time, there lived two poor old people in a small cottage in a Thuringian village, far away from the other houses, at the very edge of the settlement. The two elders were honest and hard-working. They had no children anymore. Their only son, a mischievous rascal, had secretly run away from home and never gave any sign of life again. His parents believed him to be dead and in the hands of the Lord. One day, during a village festival, the old couple sat in front of their cottage when a magnificent carriage, drawn by 6 horses, entered the village. Inside sat a handsome gentleman, alone, and behind him stood a servant dressed in livery, stiff with gold and silver braid. The carriage passed through the entire village, and the peasants, who were just leaving the church, thought it must be at least a duke or a king arriving, for even their own lord, living in the old castle, could not display such splendor. Suddenly, the carriage stopped in front of the last house in the village. The servant stepped down to open the door for his master, who then approached the old couple, surprising them as they rose from their bench. He greeted them kindly and asked if it might be possible for him to have some potato dumplings. The good old woman was greatly astonished by the request, but the handsome young man, dressed so richly, quickly satisfied her curiosity by explaining that no cook had ever managed to prepare them to his liking. He longed to taste them once more as they were made by the local folk, just as in his youth. The two elders, taking the stranger for a noble knight, invited him into their humble cottage, while he ordered his coachman to take the carriage to the inn. Following her guest's request, the old woman went down to the cellar of her little house to fetch some potatoes. She began to grate them, mash them, press them, then boiled water and dropped in the dumplings, well filled with fat, blessing the meal with her pious words, "God bless it." That is why, in the south of Thuringia, people often call such dumplings God blesses. While the old woman prepared the meal, her husband went into the garden with the stranger. They inspected the young trees he had recently planted, checking whether the stakes tied with young shoots were still holding firm, or if the wind had loosened them. Wherever the ties had come undone, the old man carefully retied the stakes to the young trees. "Why," asked the stranger, "do you tie this tree in 3 places?" "Because it has 3 bends," replied the old man, "and I want it to grow straight." "Very well, my good father," said the stranger. "But look there, you have an old, crooked tree. Why not tie it to some stakes so it may grow straight as well?" "Oh," said the old man reproachfully, "old trees, once bent, never grow straight again. If you want to set them right, you must hold them firm while they're still young." "Do you have any children?" asked the stranger again. "Oh, my lord," replied the old man, "I once had a boy, but he was a scoundrel. He did nothing but mischief, and in the end he ran away and never returned. Who knows whether God or the devil took him? Then why didn't you straighten your son as you do these trees while there was still time?" asked the stranger seriously. "If he grew up twisted, it is your fault. But if he were to return, would you recognize him?" "I don't know, my lord," said the father. "He must have grown a lot if he's still alive, but he had a mark by which I could recognize him. Only, the day he returns will be the day that never comes." Then the stranger removed his coat and showed the old man the very mark he had spoken of. The poor man raised his arms to the sky and cried out, "Lord Jesus, you are my son. But no, it cannot be. You are so rich. Have you become a count or a duke?" "No, father," replied the son gently, "neither one nor the other. I have become something else entirely. I have become a thief, because you never straightened me. But let us speak of it no more. I am a true master of my art, not one of those miserable charlatans you see so many of in the world." The old man stood speechless, with a strange mixture of fear and joy. He led his son into the house toward his mother, who had just finished the dumplings and was about to serve them. The poor mother embraced her son, wept, and said, "Thief or not, you are still my dear son, and my heart leaps for joy. I am so glad to see you again in my old age. Oh, what will your godfather, the lord of the castle up there, say?" "Yes," said the father, as the three of them bravely ate the dumplings, "your godfather will not want to hear of you in that condition. He may have you hanged without much ceremony." "Nevertheless, I still want to go see my godfather," said the son. And he went to the castle in his carriage. The gentleman was very pleased to see his godson arrive in such an outfit, for he had agreed to be his godfather out of pity. But he was not at all happy when the young man told him, in his own words, that he had taken up the life of a great thief. The gentleman immediately began to think of ways to get rid of him properly. "Well then," said the gentleman to his godson, "we shall see whether you are truly skilled at your trade, whether you have become a great thief whose work can be tolerated without shame, or whether you are one of those petty thieves who are hanged at the first gallows. That is what I will decide for you if you cannot complete the 3 trials I set for you." "Come on," replied the other. "I have no grand projects at the moment." The gentleman thought for a moment, then said, "Listen, here are the 3 trials. For the first, you must steal my favorite horse from the stable, which I will have guarded by my grooms and my soldiers, who have orders to kill anyone who attempts to enter. For the second trial, you must steal my bed linens while I lie in bed with my wife, and take the wedding ring she wears on her finger. Know that I will have pistols on me, loaded. For the third and final trial, the most difficult theft of all, you must remove the pastor and the schoolmaster from the church and hang them in a sack at the back of my chimney. For that, you will find every door left open." The master thief cheerfully thanked his godfather for assigning him such easy tasks, and went off to perform the first one that very night. The gentleman made every imaginable preparation to guard his horse. The chief groom sat on it. Another servant held the reins. A third held the tail. And a squad of soldiers kept watch at the door. They stood guard constantly, swearing and complaining of the cold, for it was very, very cold, and they were all extremely thirsty. Then an old, weary woman appeared, carrying a small cask on a basket. She coughed and trudged painfully across the yard. The little cask set tempting thoughts stirring in the soldiers' minds. Perhaps it held brandy, and brandy is a universal remedy against cold and gloom. They called the old woman to the fire to warm herself and asked what was in the cask. They guessed right. It was brandy, and to top it off, it was for sale. No sooner said than done. The soldiers hurried to buy some and told the grooms on guard in the stable. Cup after cup was handed round, and the little old woman had her hands full, keeping them filled, so that her cask was almost emptied. But the old woman was none other than the master thief himself in disguise. He had mixed a powerful sleeping potion into the brandy. It did not take long for the soldiers to close their eyes one after another, nor for the guards to sink into slumber. The thief found himself perfectly placed in the stable to catch the chief groom as he toppled from his horse. He set the man astride the rail and tied him there with a bit of cord, so the poor fellow wouldn't hurt himself when he fell to the ground. To the coachman, who was holding the reins and snoring in a corner, our thief put a rope into his hand. To another servant, he gave a handful of straw instead of a horse's tail. Then he took a horse blanket, cut it, wrapped it around the animal's legs, vaulted into the saddle, and off he went through the gate that had been left open beforehand. At daybreak, the gentleman looked out the window and saw a magnificent rider galloping toward him on an equally splendid horse who seemed vaguely familiar. The horseman pulled up and called up to him at the window, "Good day, godfather. Your horse is returned to you." "Devil take you," cried the lord of the castle when he saw it was indeed his very horse. "You are a master thief. But wait, go on, and let me see exactly how skilled you are." With that, the worthy lord snatched up his whip and angrily hurried to the stables. But when he caught sight of the ridiculous heaps made by the sleeping guards, he burst out laughing. Still, he told himself, if that rogue returns tonight to steal my bedclothes, I'll send a bullet through his head. I will have no man so dangerous near me. Night came. The gentleman went to bed with his wife and placed loaded pistols and other weapons beside him, taking care not to fall asleep, listening for any sound. For a long time, nothing moved. At last, as the night wore on, the Lord thought he heard a long ladder being propped against the window, and soon the shadow of a man preparing to climb inside appeared. "Do not be afraid, my wife," said the gentleman. He seized a pistol, took aim, fired, and lodged a ball in the thief's head. The man fell heavily at once. "This fellow won't get up," said the Lord, "but to avoid scandal, I will immediately go down the ladder and place this dead body where it belongs." His wife was quite pleased, and her husband did as he had said. Soon he returned and said to the lady, "He is truly dead. But before I put him in the grave, I want to wrap him in a sheet. And since he died for the ring, we'll give it to him. Hand me the ring and the bed sheet." She gave him both, and he hurried back down. But it was not her husband who had spoken to her, it was the thief. To carry out this trick, he had cut down a poor man who had been hanged on the nearest gallows, for in those days there were still gallows in Germany, shouldered the corpse as he climbed up the ladder. And when he heard the pistol shot, he let the dead man fall and swiftly descended the ladder to hide. When the gentleman came and found what he thought was the corpse he had shot, the thief hastened back up to the Lord's bedchamber, took on his godfather's voice, and asked for the ring and the sheet. The next day, the gentleman looked out of the window as usual. He saw a man passing back and forth, who certainly seemed to be selling linen, at least, judging by the little bundle over his shoulder, and he flashed a ring in the sunlight. Suddenly, that man cried out, "Good day, godfather. I hope you and godmother slept well last night." The gentleman was struck dumb when he recognized, fresh and lively, the godson he had himself shot the day before and buried. And he hurried to ask his wife for the sheet and the ring. "You asked me for them last night?" she replied. "By the devil, it wasn't me," cried the gentleman in anger. He restrained himself toward his wife, who could not help it. But as for his godson, he shook his fist and shouted through the window, "You arch-knave! Quick the third trial that will have you hanged, even if you boast otherwise." The following night, something extraordinary happened in the cemetery. The schoolmaster, who lived very close by, saw it first and told the pastor. Among the graves and upon the tombstones, small flames flickered with an irregular movement. "They are poor, restless souls," the pastor said, shivering. Suddenly, a black shadow appeared on the church steps, and in a hollow voice pronounced these words, "Come, all of you, come to me. The last day has come. O you men, pray, pray. The dead are already seeking their bones. Whoever still wishes to enter heaven will enter into this sack." "Shall we not wish that?" asked the schoolmaster of the pastor, his teeth chattering with fear. "It is time, before the final hour. The apostle St. Peter is calling us, there is no doubt. Put aside the money for the journey. I have saved 20 crowns for a reserve," the schoolmaster whispered. "And I have put aside 100 crowns in case of need," added the pastor. "Let us fetch them," cried the two worthies. And that is just what they did. After that, they approached the black phantom. But it was the master thief. He had bought some crayfish and stuck lit candles on their backs. "There are the poor souls of the cemetery," he cried. Then he had donned a monk's beard and frock and taken a hops sack, into which he forced the two companions after robbing them of their savings. He then closed the sack and dragged it after him through the whole village. Across a pond, he cried, "We are crossing the Red Sea." Then, through the marsh, he shouted again, "We are passing the torrent of Kedron." Then, along the castle corridor, where it was cool, he cried, "We cross the valley of Josaphat." As he mounted the stair, he exclaimed, "Here is already the ladder to heaven." At last he hung the sack on a hook in the chimney where the hams are smoked. He produced a terrible smoke and cried in a dreadful voice, "This is purgatory. One stays here for a few years." Then he went away. The pastor and the schoolmaster screamed with all their might until all the household rushed in. The master thief went straight to his godfather. "Dear godfather," he said, "the third trial is done. The pastor and the schoolmaster are hanged at the back of the chimney, and if you like, you can see them struggling or hear them cry." "Oh, you scoundrel, an arch rogue, an arch thief," the gentleman cried. "And you, the masters of thieves," the gentleman shouted. Then he ordered the two poor fellows in purgatory to be rescued. "Ah, you have bested me. Go away. Here is gold. Go and never come back. Go get yourself hanged for your money, wherever you please." "Thank you, dear godfather." "I will," said the thief. "But you would not mind handing over the wages I have honestly earned. I leave you your horse for 200 crowns, and the money of the pastor and the schoolmaster 120 crowns. Otherwise I go away with everything." The gentleman was almost struck senseless at these demands, and said, "Dear godson, it was only a joke. You do not mean to keep such things. Remember that I spared your life." "Very well, then. I will fetch the items for you," said the thief. He went off and had his carriage harnessed. He put his father and mother in it, mounted the gentleman's horse himself, slipped the ring on his finger, and returned to his godfather only the sheet with the following note: "Return the money to the pastor and the schoolmaster, or your wife will be robbed by your devoted godson and master thief." The gentleman was terrified and accepted the loss, refusing ever again to hear of his godson. He never heard from him again, for the godson had left with his parents for another country, where he became an honest and honored man. See you very soon.